It's now 494 days that Hamas is holding hostages in captivity in Gaza. 76 hostages remain in the terror dungeons, some alive, others not. Hello, I'm Westropp-Evans, and today is February 11th, 2025. This is the live daily briefing of the Israeli Citizen Spokesperson's office. Hamas announced that it will not release any more hostages. In response, US President Donald Trump issued an ultimatum. He said, if all the Gaza hostages aren't returned by Saturday at 12 p.m., I would say cancel the ceasefire, let all hell break loose. The refusal to justify terrorist action should have been echoed by every world leader 500 days ago on October 7th, 2023. Instead, hostage taking is normalized. And while many still call for a deal with Hamas terrorists, a ransom payment is what is being on offer. President Donald Trump has given Hamas a few more days to hold the hostages that it has held for now nearly 500 days. Would this slow drip of hostages, living and dead, be tolerated anywhere else? If it wasn't obvious already, Hamas cannot be allowed to remain the government of Gaza. And the sooner that the whole world sends this message that Hamas must give up power and release the hostages, the sooner this war will be over. The situation on the ground is tense. And Israel's troops just left the Netzarim corridor, allowing Hamas forces back into northern Gaza. Hamas went right up to the Israeli border, opposite the communities that they massacred back on October 7th, 2023. Hamas wants to pocket Israel's withdrawal as a concession and then to keep the hostages as insurance against further Israeli military action. Insurance to rebuild and plan another October 7th or many more, just as they have explicitly promised. Israel will never allow this to happen. In other news, the people of Israel received further tragic news this morning. The oldest hostage held by Hamas, 86-year-old Shlomo Mansour, was murdered on October 7th, 2023. Hamas took Mansour's body to Gaza. Hamas has been holding Mansour's body for nearly 500 days and demanding a massive ransom payment. And Hamas demands that it receive convicted Palestinian terrorists from Israeli prisons in exchange for allowing Mansour to have a proper funeral in Israel. Shlomo Mansour survived the pro-Nazi Fahud pogrom in 1941 in Iraq. Around 1,000 Jewish people were murdered in the Fahud. The Fahud was in part incited by the former Grand Mufti of Jerusalem, Amin al-Husseini. Husseini was a war criminal. He was a key figure in spreading Nazi ideas into the Arab world, and Hamas sees Husseini as a hero. Shlomo Mansour was murdered by Hamas death squads who were inspired by the same Nazi ideas as those who tried to kill him as a child in Iraq, and he must be remembered. All right, now let's take some questions from our audience watching live on social media.
President Trump said on Monday that he could cut aid to Jordan and Egypt if they refused his demand to take in Palestinians from Gaza. What do you make of President Trump's threat to Egypt and Jordan?
Yeah, certainly. US President Donald Trump has called on the wider Arab world to take responsibility for the Palestinians inside Gaza. This is the situation that we're found, with almost 2 million people inside Gaza being ruled by Hamas, being held within that region, and Egypt and Jordan, two significant allies of the US in the region, who form part of the relative moderate bloc of Arab states for which the US gives considerable aid. The US president is now calling on them to take action or else risk losing funding from the US. This situation certainly is a turn and a change from the last administration, the Biden administration's approach. And we'll have to see how this plays out in time. But it is important to note that these countries, Egypt, who shares a border with the Gaza Strip, let's remember that Israel only has control of part of the borders of the Gaza Strip, and Egypt indeed has a control of one of the entire borders that run along the southern end of the Strip, will have a role to play in the rebuilding of Gaza. Now, whether this is part of a negotiating tactic, whether this forms a true plan that Trump has in place, I guess we'll have to wait to see how this does play out in detail. But it's certainly clear that both Egypt and Jordan, by the way, which has upcoming meetings between their king and US President Donald Trump in the near future, these countries have been called upon to take action over the issue of Gaza, over taking control of the Gaza Strip in some way, shape, or form, and ensuring that we do not end up back in a situation where Hamas is back in power, armed, and ready to take further action against Israel. Because as we have said time and time again here at the Israeli Citizen Spokesperson's Office, that is simply an intolerable status quo and one which we will not return to.
We're also getting questions about what President Trump said about Iran. Trump said, I think we're going to make a deal. I think they're scared. I think Iran would love to make a deal, and I would love to make a deal with them without bombing them. What do you make of President Trump's approach to Iran?
Well, when it comes to issues of Iran, making a deal can be a good thing if it is done on the right terms. And I think that's the key thing we feel here living in Israel. Israel needs to be ensured that there is safety, security, and stability, and that Iran is not going to get control of nuclear weapons or other weapons of mass destruction that they could then turn and use against Israel, as we've seen them attempt to do in the past, multiple times now when they've fired massive barrages of hundreds of ballistic missiles, drones, and other heavy weaponry towards Israel. We can only imagine the scale that could ramp up to if Iran were to have access to nuclear weapons. There have been attempts at a deal in the past. Of course, the JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal that Trump pulled out of in his first administration, that was cited by many as being ultimately a path to a bomb for Iran. We'll have to see what the details of this proposed plan could be and whether there could, in fact, be a deal. But for the time being, we need to remember the key fact, which is the people of Israel and the people of Iran themselves don't actually have any fundamental issues or any fundamental problems. The key problem, of course, occurs from the Iranian regime, the theological Iranian regime that has for so long now taken this hateful ideological stance against Israel. They attempt to build their militant puppet regimes, this ring of fire that they attempted to build around Israel, which has been so summarily destroyed since October 7th, 2023, in the wake of the Hamas terrible atrocities and massacres. We will not return to this status quo, and Israel will ensure its security into the future. And that's the key message that we have to focus on here when talking about any future relationships between Israel and Iran, or the US and Iran, or any others within the region for that matter.
We have time for one more question before we have to get back to work. The IDF just published a statement saying that it has raised combat readiness and postponed leave for soldiers in the Gaza area. Does this mean there's a chance that the war will resume in Gaza?
Certainly, unfortunately, it does mean that there is a chance. I mean, this is a reality that we here in Israel have to live with every day, that there is always a chance that the sort of relative peace that may occur at any given day may be obliterated and blown away by the sort of heinous militant actors that we have surrounding us. On October 6th, I don't think there were many that would have predicted that the next day would have been a cause of so many atrocities and tragedies. But this is the reality we live in. And this is the sad reality that all those Israeli reservists are now having to return to. Those who had gone home soldiers that had returned, citizens, I should say, who had returned to their families, their loved ones, their normal everyday lives, who are seeking to return back to offices, to go back to the fields, to till the land and create growth and development and production, and now are having to put back on uniforms, prepare readiness for the risk of having to return back, and of course, for the families of hostages and the hostages themselves, who now have so much more uncertainty thanks to the heinous actions of Hamas, this terrible bad faith actor who absolutely has no interest in returning the hostages themselves because they understand that they are their insurance policy so that they can retain their sick and twisted form of power. This is the reality we live in. This is the reality we are hoping to not have to deal with in the near future. And this is the reality that we hope the world can continue to put the pressure on Hamas and others and its supporters, Iraq, Iran, Turkey, South Africa, others who would justify that regime's existence, to dismantle it so that we can move forward into a safe and secure future where all children from across this region can go to bed at night sleeping soundly and securely. And that really is our goal here. But that is all that we have time for today. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be back tomorrow at 3 p.m. Israel time, 8 a.m. on the East Coast. I'm Westropp-Evans. Thanks for watching.